Okay, so if I'm reading the room right, I think people might just like my videos on the Owl House and Amphibia. Just maybe. So, let's talk about them. The frogs and the burbs. Specifically, well, despite how similar Amphibia and the Owl House can be, heck, I've done 2 videos about how they use shockingly similar plot beats, I've always been fascinated at just how incredibly different our main protagonists are in the middle of all that. So let's talk about Luz Noceda and Anne Boonchoi, shall we? The Good Witch and the Hero of Wartwood. The main difference between these two? Their arcs. To those who don't know, there's 3 different character arcs that we tend to see. A positive change arc, where someone becomes better and improves, usually focusing on becoming better as a person rather than just physically. You're gonna see this one by far the most in media, everything from Luke Skywalker to Ebenezer Scrooge. Then there's the negative change arc. I'm very fond of them when done right. You can probably guess, this is when a character gives into their demons and their fears, when they're corrupted or worsened in some way, shape or form, whether it's from pride or cowardice or regret or greed, or whatever sin suits your fancy, and becomes a worse person for it. And when they're done right, ooh, I love it. Then there's the flat character arc, which, I mean, it's not really the focus of this video, so I'll just plug Totally Not Mark's Goku video on this one. A flat character is someone who doesn't go through a significant amount of growth themselves, but instead the focus of their story is inspiring change in other characters. I think it's worth saying before we move on that none of these types of arcs are necessarily any better or worse than the others. They all have their merits, and they all have characters I love that go through them. And as you can probably tell by the thumbnail, Luz and Anne go through a negative change arc and positive change arc respectively. Anne is probably the easiest one to talk about here, but it's worth noting that, personally, I think Anne's arc is done incredibly well and is one of the main highlights of the show overall. Let me explain. In order to make a positive change arc work, while it might not be required, it really helps to have your character start out as not the greatest of people. Like, sure, you can have characters start out as already a decent person and just grow into a true hero, but it can be much more fulfilling to see someone change to be a truly good person after starting in a not so good place. And at the very beginning of Amphibia, Anne Boonchoi is a selfish, manipulative, lazy, rude, spoiled, uncaring brat who only keeps some sense of likability through the fact that A, she's in a very crappy situation right now, and B, her occasional bravery when it comes to protecting the family that's taken her in. And I honestly love the decision to have your character in a Disney show start out so, well, unlikable isn't the word, but it's made very clear that Anne is not a good person. Hell, in the first episode, we're shown her straight up shoplifting. This kind of stuck up mean girl becoming a better person tends to be reserved for a side character instead of a main protagonist. And honestly, I'm really happy we got one getting so much of the limelight, because with Anne being allowed to start at such a low point, it allows for so much growth throughout season 1. As the series continues, when the villagers talk about Anne in such high regard, so worried for her well-being, it's not just because she's the main character, but because we've seen her build her relationship from the ground up with these people, and it's really heartwarming to see. And I love how she even earns the respect of the stereotypical greedy mayor character, using him as kind of the natural endpoint of Anne's growth from the time we reach the first season finale. And at the beginning of season 2, it's fascinating to compare. This passionate, kind-hearted, protective girl is almost unrecognisable from the show's first episodes. It might be said that Amphibia season 1 has a lot of filler, but I'd argue kind of against that, because that so-called filler is her building these relationships that carry out throughout the show. And after that, well, Anne doesn't do a huge amount of character growth throughout season 2, aside from, you know, the odd occasional life lesson, she's actually surprisingly chill. Instead, when it comes to development, we focus more on the development of Sprig and Polly and Hot Pop and Sasha, etc. She's become incredibly close with her little frog family. The focus has gone from building connections to having those connections be tested. Whether it's from the music box or the decision of leaving them behind to make getting home easier. There's a reason why this image is one of the most famous of the series. It really puts a frog in your throat. It's a really heartfelt scene because it does a really good job of making you think, even just for a second, that they are really going to split up. And you suddenly realise that no matter how awesome of a character Marcy is, you're really going to miss her relationship with these three. It's almost like it's a blueprint for later. Then you got True Colours. I don't want to repeat myself from past videos, so TLDR, best episode in the series, though it's a decently close margin. We get to see the culmination of Anne and the Plantars' relationship, for now, as she goes berserk over her froggy little brother supposedly dying. We get to see her deservedly snap and go for the kill against Sasha even before that. And of course, she sees her friend getting kebabbed right in front of her and gets zapped back home with her froggy friends. Now we're going to ignore the whole seeing your friend get stabbed through the chest part because the show sure as hell does. But in season 3 we're given a great new avenue to the changes Anne's gone through her parents. Even today, I'm still not too sure about their addition to the show. I'm sorry, Matt, I love the idea of having your own mum voice the character of the mother, but every time she spoke I was downright distracted by the delivery. Sorry. But through them, we get to see just how much Anne has changed ever since she's been in Amphibia. Because, yeah, she used to be quite a prick, but now she's genuinely responsible, caring, and is that a spaceship in the sky? Yeah, we kind of skipped most of 3B because there's not much to talk about in terms of Anne. All In and True Colours are where we get to see Anne's growth peak. Which, I mean, yeah, it's how it should be, it's the series finale. I'm just glad it was done so right. We actually get to see her speak and self-reflect about her change, admit to her faults. We get to see her fight alongside her friends in the ultimate moment of joy. We get to see her perform the ultimate sacrifice for this world and the people she has grown to truly love. And she gets brought back. Maybe? Kind of? Yes? No? The fanbase is still freaking out about this to this day. But her story is over. Its end was masterful, and everything about that end was earned from this positive character growth.
Wait, are you saying that in 78 years I'm gonna...
Now, in direct comparison to a character like that, you have one Luz Noceda. I probably really butchered that name, wow! Someone who, if say, you only watched season 1 of the Owl House, you'd be staring at your screen in utter confusion going, how on earth is this character someone who goes through negative changes? Also, right now I'm staring through my screen going, hi, so less than 1% of you are subscribed and it would be genuinely awesome if you could like and subscribe and comment because I genuinely want to know your thoughts on the video and how I could improve. Okay, right, back to the show. For pretty much all of season 1 and a decently large amount of season 2, Luz is a flat arc character. She starts off as a lovable misfit nerd, and that is how she continues for the majority of the series. I'm not saying she doesn't have flaws, far from it. However, those flaws tend to be focused around her being, well, too trusting and too kind. However, that's fine, because as a flat art character, it's not her development that's important, it's how she impacts others. And wow, does she impact others throughout the show. Ida and Amity are easily the most obvious examples. Amity starts out a very similar character to Anne that we just went over. Stuck up, rude, prideful, bitter towards anyone who dares to take her spotlight, and carrying a whole lot of baggage. But through her relationship with Luz, not only do we get what is one of the singular best LGBT relationships presented in media, but we also get a young girl being able to express herself and show her kindness and love for her friends without feeling like she's demonstrating weakness, all thanks to Luz.
It's just like my life, in a way.
There's a reason Lumity is known as one of the biggest highlights of an amazing show. Then there's Ida, who seems to start out as literally everyone's favourite character, but is lucky if she makes the top 5 by the time we're finished season 2. I really can't understate what an impression this little scrunkly of a child had on the Owl Lady. She might have been charismatic as all hell, but until Luz showed up, she was a recluse on the run from the law and, let's be honest, more than likely lonely and bored out of her mind. Luz changed something with her. She opened up about her worries and woes, tried to seek help, reconnected with her sister, and of course, become the best owl mum the Isles has ever seen. The relationship of these two makes or breaks the show, and by God does it make it. This all comes to a head, of course, in the finale of season 1, when Ida is captured by the Emperor, only partially because of Luz, permanently losing her magic. This is the first domino of a chain reaction in the show when it comes to losing her psyche, but we'll get to that soon enough. Now, when it comes to these two characters, I think their differences are also highlighted in the way they actually end up in their fantasy worlds. See, while Luz accidentally ends up in the Boiling Isles, she still chooses to stay there, and throughout season 1 could go back home anytime she wanted. There was literally nothing stopping her. Whereas with Anne, she is warped into this terrifying world of giant humanoid amphibian people with no idea what the hell just happened and no idea how to get home. She's trapped, and I do have to say, it makes for a much more compelling setup right off the bat. But it's also very reflective of their arcs and stories. Like, if Anne had a way of getting back home early in the series, she'd have taken it in a heartbeat. She would never have gone through all the character development if she hadn't been forced into it, which is a large part of what makes it interesting. And while I just mentioned about how Luz's story doesn't have nearly a compelling a start, the fact that she always had a choice to leave makes her decisions and later outcomes hit you like a ton of bricks. Not just choosing to destroy the portal, which is a big one, but also all the havoc and destruction that she believes she had an important part in bringing to this world. Speaking of which, I've put it off long enough. Let's talk about Luz's negative change arc, shall we? Because, oh boy, it's a doozy, and I am so not prepared for this, so let's just dive in. Woo! As mentioned, the first domino of Luz's arc begins around the end of season 1, start of season 2. For the first time, we've seen the poor girl's reckless actions having permanent effects on the people around her, and it's very clear throughout that it's crushing for her. Of course, this time she's reassured by her owl mum that she's not to blame and things seem relatively solved for the time being. What comes next is not solved quite as quickly. Luz finally gets to talk with her mother, which, in Camilla's fear and panic, just ends up heaping a brand new tidal wave of guilt and terror for Luz. And this persists throughout almost the entire rest of the show, even as late as season 3. You can tell just how much this moment shook her up. It's really not a fun adventure for her anymore. You know what else isn't a fun adventure? Hollow Mind. This is the episode that really sends Luz into a spiral of guilt, fear and depression. Her slowly dawning realisation and refusal to say out loud that she's been a willing accomplice in this psychopath's master plan, as well as her breakdown in front of the witch hunter, are both utterly heartbreaking. But the horrifying beauty of this is not the realisation in the moment, but how we see utterly crumble Luz from here on out. From this moment forwards, aside from the occasional outburst, her confidence and goofiness are almost non-existent. And it's both great and horrible seeing this character so full of life and joy, being so closed off and paranoid. You really do see her start to fall apart throughout the last few episodes of season 2, trying to do anything right. This isn't even mentioning her still not being over the death of her father, a masterfully crafted episode, almost being petrified in one of the most overlooked scenes of the series, and now at the end of King's Tide being separated from Ida and King, her friends trapped in the human world, and she thinks it's all because of her. Even if it isn't at all, because the human mind really isn't logical. It exaggerates and it overthinks and it stresses. Which leads us right into thanks to them and for the future. Which, if you're a Luz stan, must have been rather painful for you. Hell, I know it was painful for me. Not only do we get more details about Luz's passed away father, in one of the more heartbreaking scenes in a show with a whole lot of heartbreaking scenes, but we also get to see her at her psychologically worst throughout most of these episodes. This girl, once so full of boundless energy and optimism and love, being turned into a cold, self-loathing shell of a person, genuinely hurts the soul to see after you've been on this journey with her. And it's really telling that the only time she smiles genuinely in season 3 before getting her talisman is consoling someone else, or because of Amity being Amity. And the scene of her in class might be more understated than other scenes in the final season, but it genuinely gives me chills. Luz isn't just slipping, she's spiraling, and the only thing that ends up helping? Acceptance. Acceptance and love from the one who started all of this. Even if it was from a place of wanting to help, I think it's truly amazing that just how many people resonate so much with Camila and Luz's talk near the end of For the Future. And from there, we finally get to see the old Luz break through with the first genuine joy in a long while. She's feeling far from perfect, as we clearly see, but for the most part, watching and dreaming is a cacophony of wonderful happiness for Luz and her found family. People seem to think that I disregard purely happy endings from my last video, and I'm here to tell you now, I was grinning like an absolute fiend for the entirety of watching and dreaming. I was ecstatic to see Luz finally enjoying life again, the defeat of Belos, and of course the time skip, where we see her grow into the good witch she, her mother, and her adoptive mother all knew she could be. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more, then please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. What would you think of me remaking my Avatar ranking list? I put a lot of effort into it last time, but I have improved so much in terms of audio and video quality since then, and I feel the difference is night and day. But again, would love to hear what you'd like to see from me. Until next time,